quick. So welcome to the draft plan open space public meeting for open space public meeting. And if we have any phone callers, which I don't think we do, there's a way to participate and I can go over that as well. So tonight, and as well as in the plan, we want to recognize the people that have been caring for the land and inhabiting the land for time immemorial. So the plan starts with honoring and acknowledging the peoples that have stewarded the land for centuries and generations before us. This helps us put into context and recognize the importance of both past and future land stewardship for different types of open space as we jump into discussing the future of open space for Douglas County. Okay, we'll jump right into chapter one. Chapter one really explains why we're doing this. We aren't just starting with a blank slate. We started from Eco Squared and the previous comprehensive plans for the county and the open space charter that was established in 2019. So those really set the framework for why we're doing this. And then the plan 2040, the comprehensive plan that the county did a couple years ago, really set some action items that we're accomplishing throughout this plan. So that's where we're starting from, but there is no complete plan for open space across the county. This plan is going to be a tool for not only the county staff, but partners, agencies, other jurisdictions within the county to really look at and to tier off of as you do other efforts as well. So we really wanted to put together this plan that multiple people can look at to enhance open space throughout the county, because there's a lot of reasons why there have been changes in land uses, for example, increased pressures such as severe weather patterns, as well as different succession planning. So when we talk about open space, we're talking about a lot of different types of open space, from grasslands to farmlands, from cultural sites to trails, those historic features. So these landscapes that we're talking about as open space are wide open spaces that you can enjoy or see visually. They can be in public ownership or private ownership. They're lands between different communities that provide that separation, provide that visual open space as well. Chapter 2 highlights the community engagement. So we started this planning effort in very early 2023, but really in earnest in April when a community-wide questionnaire got mailed out. We mailed out project announcements and questionnaires so people could respond in hard copy to a questionnaire across the county. You can also respond online as well. And that was really what kick-started our process for understanding what the community's vision was and what values they wanted to see represented in this plan. In June, we had some open houses, some focus groups. We met with a variety of different types of agencies that represented other governments, health, land managers, recreation, arts, landowners, multicultural, as well as youth. And then we took all that feedback and came back in October of last year and had an open house in person and got feedback as well as online feedback throughout the process. And now we're at that final third stage of public engagement where we presented the draft plan based on all of the feedback that we've received throughout this process. This plan doesn't end when it gets adopted, or when hopefully it gets adopted here in the next month or so, but this plan will live and be adapted throughout the next phase through implementation. So beyond today and beyond its adoption, that there's still an opportunity to go back to the plan, see what's working, see what's not working, and revise. Yeah, so I mentioned some of the outreach activities we did for phase 1. Oh, we also did a countywide tour. We visited some landowners, some farms, some ranches across the county, some historic sites, historic trails, and those things as well. So out of that first phase, these are sort of the overarching themes that we started to hear that you'll see as we develop the vision and conservation criteria. Definitely heard a lot about preserving the environment, water quality, water quantity, wildlife corridors, folks enjoying recreation, having that access to nature, getting youth out, understanding how to interact with nature and interact with the environment. Protection of agricultural land and the agricultural food systems that are important to the county, escape from urbanism, balancing of economic uses, environmental concern, resistance to certain types of development, especially some of those larger scale industrial ones, the need to provide access to the community and within throughout the county. I mean, so making sure there's geographic access throughout the county for public open space, and of course, historical and cultural preservation. Just a really quick recap of phase 2. We had a great in-person meeting and some online comments as well, where we could use sticky notes, and we adjusted some of our approaches to what you'll see in our conservation vision after we had this meeting. And then finally, our engagement throughout the planning process involved an advisory committee. The open space advisors met 7 times. They joined us on the walking tour, and they've been instrumental in reviewing the documents as we've gone through this process. You can see here that list of folks that were represented on that committee from a variety of different backgrounds and different interests across the county. Chapter 3 is needs and existing conditions. If you're really into like data and background, go check out this chapter, and it really sets the stage for what we're going to be talking about in the vision. I won't go through all of the chapters, this chapter, because it is pretty detailed and data rich, but it establishes the baseline condition, but also why we're talking about different types of resources and how this plan can help direct the future of those resources. So each of these sections has like a page or two. There's a lot of maps in there, so you can really see when we get to the conservation criteria why we're talking about these different categories. So we're talking about the existing conserved lands, natural resources, so talking about the different types of biodiversity that are across the county, existing and planned trails. There's been a lot of work on transportation and active modes and pedestrian bicycle connectivity, so we wanted to highlight the planning that's already happened there. We established the historic context and cultural resources, very rich in historic trails and historic sites throughout the county, and that's one of the reasons for this open space plan. Highlighting important agricultural resources and soils, discussing how climate resiliency plays into all of those different categories actually. And then finally, land use and current county management. It's important to understand the pressures that are and the opportunities as well as constraints that are going to face an open space program moving forward. So next up, this chapter is chapter 4. Our conservation vision is really the meat, I would say, of the plan as far as understanding what all of the input that we got so far and why open space is important. This chapter is made up of 3 different sections: the vision, and we have a vision statement. The statement is the overall guiding direction for the plan and for the county and for the open space. for open space in general, regardless of land ownership. The vision is supported by a number of community values, which can be used in the decision-making process to make informed decisions. These values go into more detail of what we heard throughout the process. And then finally, the conservation criteria. The conservation criteria provides examples of our natural, cultural, and agricultural landscapes. And so the details that are in this section explains what's important and what we need to consider as we move forward. So I'll talk a little bit more about each of these. Here's the vision statement in full and then a summary of the values. You can see the values in the full plan as well. But the vision is to nurture a community dedicated to preserving and enhancing our natural environment through inclusive stewardship, innovative partnerships, and responsible resource management, fostering a harmonious future where biodiversity, heritage, and well-being flourish. Some of the values that support that vision statement are enhance the natural environment, looking at incentives, education, collaboration with willing landowners and partners, continuing that local farming and ranching heritage, support the local and future food system, creating a culturally inclusive stewardship, adapting for an unpredictable future, regionally connected recreation network, so those larger corridors and trail corridors, safe access for all different types of ages, abilities, backgrounds there as well, and then historic landscapes and cultural landscapes. And then finally, we just want to make sure we're doing this all through thoughtful use of county partnerships, financial and environmental resources. Okay. The final part of the vision is the conservation criteria. And again, I don't have all the details of this for each of these topics up on the slides. But these pieces are sort of the meat of what's important. The conservation criteria is separated into these categories that you can see there on the left. And the conservation criteria can be adapted and prioritized across multiple different county departments or partnerships to meet the diverse needs of an open space program. So depending on the different ways the open space program is implemented, and we'll talk about some of those models here in a second, you can pull from these categories to highlight the importance of different types of open space. So here's an example. We have a description of native plant communities, what that means, why it's important, and then some of the key characteristics that could be pulled into a grant application or future zoning tools, or pulled into future mapping, for example. So the conservation criteria, there's these 8 primary ones and then some additional conservation criteria as well. So the plan really highlights, based on what we heard from the community, native plant communities, riparian corridors, floodplain and floodways, historic and cultural sites, working agricultural lands and high quality soils. And then, so those are sort of, it starts with those sort of natural resources, but then also highlights areas and opportunities that would enhance all 5 of those first couple criteria, such as the potential for restoration, ensuring public access, or the proximity to existing public lands. Some of those other additional ones are talking about partnerships and collaboration. And if you can match multiple conservation criteria, making sure that we can highlight some of those co-benefits if you meet multiple different types of criteria. And above all, public safety should be underlined as well. So the final chapter, chapter 5, is about implementation. So we have that vision, we have that conservation criteria that explains the what, and then and the why, and then the chapter 5 is really the how and the what next. So So the first part of this chapter highlights how Douglas County can implement the open space program through a phased approach. So first of all, the county will continue to maximize existing partnerships and educational tools. There's a lot of people working in this space, from NRCS to the Kansas Biological Survey to the Kansas Forest Service to Wildlife and Parks. And so there's a lot of already existing resources out there. And so enhancing those resources and those educational opportunities, well, the county will keep doing that. Then the next couple are kind of building and expanding the existing role of the county. So right now, planning and zoning is involved in reviewing development applications, and there's different ways that natural resources are brought into that review. And one is also an agreement that can be a voluntary agreement that the landowners can enter into, called the Agricultural and Natural Resources Protection Agreements. So the county could continue to do that. But I'm going to talk about here in a second about some additional tools to incentivize and innovate the protection of open space, while sometimes leaving that in private land ownership for the most part. Another way the county can continue to enhance what they're already doing is through expanding the natural and cultural grant program. So the HCC, the Heritage Conservation Council, currently funds open space protection, restoration projects, different environmental and open space related projects. And it's a growing percent of the grant applications that are coming in. So one way is to consider expanding that or creating a separate or new sort of fund depending on different types of grant availability. Building on that need to consolidate and kind of combine open space roles throughout the county, I have had the pleasure to work with planning and zoning, heritage, sustainability, public works throughout this process. In each part of the county sort of does a little bit different. Public Works manages the current county properties. Sustainability is involved in food systems. Heritage is obviously involved in the cultural piece of this project. And so combining and sort of having an overarching person within the county as that first phase to coordinate and discuss between the two, the different county departments, is one way to start before a true like open space department is created. And then one really unique opportunity, if there is additional funding available, is to create sort of an open space grant program. So this would look like different ways where we could either have like more of a nonprofit landowner type grant program similar to the HCC grant program, or have like a share back type program that goes to local partners through some sort of cooperative agreement. So those are the different types of program models, and through that phased approach, the county can start small, continue to do what it's doing now, and then build up with some additional projects as the thought and the open space program is sort of proven over the next couple of years. So those are the program models. Now here we're going to talk about some tools that the county can use. There's a lot of tools in the planning realm that we can use. First of all, future land use mapping. So as you might recall, if those folks came to our meetings in October, you saw a map. And we actually kind of started to think about going away from that map, as we heard from the community that we might not have been highlighting it in the best way, and that's why we ended up with the conservation criteria as well, to have that flexibility. But the future land use map could take that initial mapping and compare it with growth and development and economic pieces, and identify where we have have sensitive lands as well as future mapping for those other community priorities. Like I said, housing, economic development, land use, those types of things. We can further implement some environmental assessment requirements throughout the zoning code. And so when a property comes in for development, they would have to implement some sort of environmental assessment requirement when a development does come in. There's different types of zoning districts, and that would kind of come after a future land use map is implemented. So these zoning districts would provide different sets of criteria for the lands that were in those areas, given that the public identified through a public process what's important in that zoning area. Continuing to promote and expand floodplain protections. There's already existing requirements in the land use code for floodplain, but there's definitely additional measures that could be taken. Similarly, with open space dedications, that could be updated in the land use code to, as development happens, a development is required to dedicate so much to open space if it meets some of that conservation criteria. And then having different types of stewardship agreements with agritourism to promote that heritage, to promote that livelihood, to promote that food systems, as we saw that that's a very important value. Some of the other tools are looking at sustainability for rural land use management, friends of groups, donations, of course, once there's an open space program, and then promoting conservation through tax incentives. This really happens at the state level, but there is some discussions at the state level of converting or allowing for incentives if you can conserve your land. So those are a lot of different tools and a lot of different programs. But what we heard is what is the county going to implement? And so this plan proposes 3 significant and actionable areas where the county can take an immediate leadership role. So I mentioned that phased approach. So these are the 3 projects or 3 initiatives that the county is going to get started on right away, and then move into some of those other phased approaches for those different program models as the program expands, as support for the program expands as well. So the first one is maintain what we got, right? So the current county parks can be improved and enhanced to promote natural resource values and that sustainability and stewardship of the lands. So identifying a planning effort to highlight what are the sensitive lands within each of the existing county properties and revitalize those areas. That will provide a number of benefits like improving lake and stream health and enhancing access and facilities. Further, we can create some entry-level jobs that are related to natural resource stewardship careers, and we can and further enhance these properties through volunteers, education, opportunities. The second one is programmatic support for land conservation. So working with partners, having a county program that is dedicated to offset and leverage resources for private conservation, such as conservation easements that are initiated by willing landers, like giving and helping for the cost of a conservation easement through like a grant program, for example, is one way that the county can help out. And then continue to advocate for those state level benefits to further leverage and offset the cost of private land conservation. The third and final project is looking at and studying and creating an action plan for the Wakarusa River Corridor. Throughout the planning effort, we've heard that the riparian corridors, the river, the land adjacent to the Wakarusa River is very important for a variety of measures, from preserving that land for river health, for conservation of cultural resources, those types of things as well. So we'd work with the Haskell Indian Nations University and other indigenous communities to identify a plan, working with the landowners and the zoning tools in that area to really create an actionable plan that's specific to the corridor, since it really needs its own effort. There's a lot of different moving parts along the corridor. So having a specific study effort to really identify what the community and the local landowners want in that area. And working across the county, the whole entire county, on that project. Okay, so next steps, like I mentioned, the plan's been out for a couple weeks now, and then it's going to be available for the next week as well. So you can give your comments online. I'm gonna, for those in the room, I think you got like a little sheet that says where you can go to give comments. I'm gonna put it in the chat as well. But the full document is available online. There's a link to print it out if you're interested, but the online document gives you a way to comment, kind of like you're commenting in a PDF on, but it's in a browser instead. So if you scroll through, you can pop open this website. If you're interested in commenting on the open space planning history, for example, you'd plop a comment bubble down there and then provide your comment. It does ask for your name for when you first give your comment, but your email stays private as well. So yeah, we're looking for comments that are specific and present maybe new information or present a key change, something that maybe we overlooked. And so please provide any comments that we can help refine the existing text that's in there to really highlight what's important. And if there's anything that's like not clear, like a term or something like that, we can help define that through the plan edits as well. So after February 25th, we will work to address those comments, making sure that we're clarifying anything and making that document really a document that can live on for the next 10 years. We'll have our final advisory committee meeting to review any of those key changes and get their recommendation. And then the plan will be considered for adoption tentatively on April 3rd at a county commissioner meeting, which is also a public hearing if you want to attend that meeting as well. Okay, well, thanks for listening to the presentation. I hope that was insightful and provided a quick overview of the plan that you guys can take back and provide any comments that you have. So at this time, yeah, that concludes our presentations. I'm going to stop sharing here. And we can go into our open house format. So I'm gonna mute those in the room. You can get up. I know we'll get pretty loud in there. So you guys can get up and start mingling and ask any questions to the staff that will be around the room. And then those folks that are online, if you want to raise your hand to ask a question, I can make sure that you get that those permissions changed, and so we can have a discussion here online as well. So thanks everyone, and we really appreciate your comments and your feedback that you've given throughout the process. We couldn't have done this this plan without the community's input. So thanks again. Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Melinda.
Hi. Okay. So, I just had a little curious on how this plan will integrate or what that